Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering my pick for the best Bard build in Baldur's Gate 3. This is an update video to my previous video of the same name, because that's actually one of the earliest ones that I did for Baldur's Gate 3 on this channel, and was recorded well before Tactician mode came out, so I wanted to update my Bard build for Honor mode, and of course all of the lessons that we've learned over the last 8 months of character optimization. We'll be focusing on a skill-based and casting Bard today, because that's what's unique and powerful about Bard as a class, but if you're interested in a more martial version of Bard, because Bards truly can do everything, then you can check out my build video called The Best Character in Baldur's Gate 3, for a character that focuses more on doing damage as a Bard. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Doglatine for the £10 donation, and to Trog H, Roy Brabson, and Zikendi Tightbomb for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really do appreciate the support. And I also want to say thank you to everyone who gave feedback on the settings for my new microphone. I've been working on getting that set up. Let me know if this is sounding better to all of you. So what do bards bring to the table? Well, the real question is, what do bards not bring to the table? Bards provide utility, control, support, and damage. They will keep your allies alive and bring ruination to your enemies. There's really nothing that bards can't do, and they can also be customized even further to provide anything that your party might happen to be missing, because they get the widest access to skills, abilities, and spell selection in the entire game, with magical secrets letting you take powerful spells from any class and incorporate them into your strategy. Bards are the jack of all trades class, but they're also the master of all trades class. They get to do pretty much anything extremely well. The only thing that they can't do particularly well is tank, but they also get powerful defensive abilities to make your tanks better, or in a pinch, save themselves from bad situations. So bards really will cover all of the roles. They make the perfect party leader as a result, because you can just cover everything. They will provide every skill that your party might happen to need, make you excellent at succeeding on very important dialogue checks, and covering all of the other skills in the game, because they can take literally any skill. I should also mention that I think bards are probably the most fun class to play, in my opinion, because of the sheer versatility, but because they are more utility, control, and support focused than damage focused, they also require you to think through your turns a little bit more than other classes, which for me is very fun. So if you're looking for a character that is extremely powerful and extremely versatile, but a little more complex to play than some of the other characters, Bard is definitely for you. For race for your bard, you can pick anything that you think fits your character's flavor, and it will work just fine, but there are a couple options that will give you some fairly significant mechanical benefits. Because the subclass of bard that we're using normally only gets light armor proficiency, races that get access to medium armor proficiency or shield proficiency can increase the defensive capabilities of your character significantly. In particular, Githyanki, which gets medium armor, as well as astral knowledge, making you even better at skills than you naturally are already, is an excellent pick for Bard. You also get once per day Misty Step, which can help you reposition, get out of bad situations, or Half Wood Elf, which gets shield proficiency and 5 feet of additional movement speed, making your character much easier to position appropriately on the battlefield, are excellent picks. Halfling can allow you to reroll 1s, which is very useful as well, and Dwergar lets you remain permanently invisible while you're not in combat, and start every combat invisible, which is a huge benefit for a character that mostly doesn't want to get targeted by attacks. So those are the races that I'd recommend from a mechanical standpoint. But again, you can pick anything and it won't significantly impact your character in terms of mechanics. For our first level, we are of course going to be taking Bard, and I'm going to be focusing on a monoclass Bard for this video. As part of my simple build series, we're focusing on monoclass characters, though I will talk about multiclassing options near the end of the video. And for our attribute selection, we are going to take one of 2 attribute splits, basically depending on how confident you are in your positioning on the battlefield. If you're playing on Honor mode and are a little more experienced with the game, and a little more confident that you can avoid taking sort of random incidental damage that might break your concentration on spells, then I recommend taking 16 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, 10 Wisdom, and 17 Charisma. If you are relatively new to the game and expect that you might misposition your character once or twice and want a little bit of safety net to maintain concentration on spells, then go ahead and drop dexterity to 14 and take 16 constitution instead. This will stop you from losing concentration if you randomly take 5 damage from, stepping on in something that's on fire or something like that, which can certainly happen if you're new to the game, and gives you a little bit more of a safety net. For this version of the build, I'm going to be showcasing the 16 dexterity version, but I wanted to point out both of those attributes splits as possible choices. We take the 17 charisma here, despite it being an odd number, which you normally want to avoid, because we're going to be picking up 1 odd point of charisma later on down the build, so we will bring that to 18 in only a single point, because we took 17 to start with. For our skill selection, we want to make certain that we have persuasion and intimidation, because of course this character is going to be doing all of our dialogue checks, but we actually don't want to take deception or performance, because we're going to get those for free from a feat that we take later on down the line. So we don't want to spend points on them since we're going to be getting them for free anyways. With those 2 skill points, you can select something like sleight of hand and acrobatics, which are good defensively, and of course will let this character do all your lockpicking and trap disarming as well, giving you all of the utility that you need in a single package. For your background, I recommend that you take the Guild Artisan background, because it gives you persuasion and insight, 2 skills that you would have wanted anyways, though you can take any background that gives you any mix of these 5 skills, and that will be fine. But Guild Artisan gives you 2 skills that you want, and also has some of the easiest to trigger inspirations in the game, and I think is the background with the most possible inspirations in the game. So it's a pretty good one to pick for this character. Inspiration is a resource that you get for performing certain story events based on your background as you play through the game. It lets you reroll dice. It's very useful for passing skill checks, so Guild Artisan gives you the most possible of those and makes your skill checks more easier as you go through the game. That's it for skills. Let's talk about spells. For our cantrip selection, we're going to take Minor Illusion, because Minor Illusion is one of the best spells in the entire game, let alone just one of the best cantrips. You can use this out of combat to change enemy facing or cause enemies to move around. There's no saving throw against it, they just go towards the Minor Illusion. So you can use it to move them next to cliffs, group them up for AoE spells, pull them apart to pick them off one by one, face them away so you can sneak up on them. This ability has so many possible uses. The only limit really is your creativity, so pretty much every party wants access to Minor Illusion because it's just so powerful a tool to have in your arsenal. Bard's only combat cantrip is Vicious Mockery, so you might think this is a natural pick for our second one, but you actually don't really need a combat cantrip on this character, because we have 16 dexterity, so we can just shoot a bow, which does more damage than we would be doing with Vicious Mockery anyways, and is a little bit more reliable because it's a hit roll rather than a saving throw. So instead of Vicious Mockery, I'm going to recommend taking Friends. Friends is dangerous on Honor Mode, because it counts as committing a crime on Tactician or Honor Mode, but is free on lower difficulty settings. But on Honor Mode, you can get around the downside of Friends by using Disguise Self, or simply by leaving the area after using Friends, and the advantage on Charisma checks is hugely powerful for passing important dialogue checks, so having access to Friends is very, very helpful. Even if you only use it on characters that you intend to subsequently fight, it still is extremely useful throughout the entire game, but if you are willing to leave the area or use Disguise Self or other means of deflecting attention, or just talk your way out of trouble, then Friends is very powerful for dialogue checks. Do be careful with its use on Honor Mode, because if you make the wrong encampment of former allies angry, that can be a run ender, but Friends is just too powerful to pass up on, in my opinion. For our spell selection, we're going to take Healing Word, which is a bonus action that heals an ally with a 60-foot range. Incredibly useful for getting downed allies up from being unconscious. If someone takes enough damage to go down to 0 hit points, you can just get them back up with a bonus action. Also just very useful for incidental healing throughout the fight. Don't use this as a primary method of healing. Rather, if you want to heal, most of the time you're better off drinking a healing potion, but healing word's range and flexibility gives you so many options in combat that it's extremely useful to have available. Next, we want Dissonant Whispers. This is going to be our main combat spell for the first 2 levels, until we get access to second level spells. Dissonant Whispers does pretty good damage for a level 1 spell, but more importantly, frightens an enemy for 2 turns if they fail the saving throw at all, and they don't get a second save against it, so if they fail 1 save, they're frightened for 2 turns. Frightened means they can't move, so it completely shuts down melee enemies, preventing them from harming you at all. Dissonant Whispers is extremely powerful as a result, and an excellent combat spell to have at early levels. Next, you are going to want to have Disguise Self. It's just very useful for your dialogue checks, extremely powerful throughout the entire game, and one that I recommend picking up. Unless you pre-ordered the game and have the hat that gives it to you, then you'll probably use that, but just knowing Disguise Self is very helpful. And finally, if you don't have it elsewhere in your party, you should absolutely pick up Longstrider. What Longstrider doesn't mention is that this is a ritual spell, just like Disguise Self, so these two can be cast without spending spell slots, as long as you cast them outside of combat, and can give you a ton of extra value. Longstrider just gives your entire party 10 feet of bonus movement speed all day, because you can just freely cast it on your whole party. Hugely powerful tool for positioning, and one that we definitely want access to somewhere in the party. If another character has Longstrider, you don't need it on this character, and can pick up either a utility spell like Speak with Animals, though there's enough potions of Speak with Animals in the game that you don't need to actually learn this spell. You can just use potions, or Thunder Wave as a defensive option, or Tasha's Hideous Laughter as another control option, though most of the time you're going to be better off with Dissonant Whispers against most melee enemies in the early game. Tasha's will get better later once our save DC goes up, but for now, these are going to be our primary combat spells. Bard also, at first level, gets access to Bardic Inspiration, which is a pretty powerful ability. You can use it for a bonus action to buff an ally's attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws. So you can use this to guarantee landing some attacks. If you give it to an ally who's about to attack with an important attack roll, you can use Bardic Inspiration to make sure that that lands. Very helpful, and one that you will be using. Later, we'll get better uses for these inspiration dice, but don't forget about them for the early game. They are very helpful. Alright, that is it for level 1. Let's move on to level 2. At Bard level 2, firstly, we get access to 2 very powerful abilities just naturally from leveling up in Bard. The first one is Jack of All Trades, which lets us add half our proficiency bonus, which at this level is +1, to any skills that we're not proficient in. So anything we didn't select, we still get a pretty good bonus in, and that means that this character can always make all of the skill checks that you might want them to make. It's very powerful to be able to do this, just giving you access to a few more incidental skill proficiencies as you go, because there are a lot of times when in dialogue another skill comes up and you want to be able to roll it. Jack of all trades makes you more likely to succeed on those checks when they happen. The second one is Song of Rest, which lets you and your allies have a short rest. You can cast this once per day, so it means essentially any party with a bard goes from being able to take 2 short rests in an adventuring day to being able to take 3 short rests. It's a 50% increase, which is extremely powerful in terms of refreshing your spell slots, your hit points, and your short rest abilities. Spell slots if you have a warlock or something like that that refreshes on a short rest, and just makes your party so much more sustainable. Song of Rest is a really powerful ability for going through the game, and again, one that's somewhat easy to forget that you have, so make sure you remember to use this. For our spell selection at this level, we're going to pick up a utility spell. Either if you are finding enemies are getting on top of you more than you'd like, take Thunder Wave, because this can push enemies away, and having the thunder damage isn't terrible for certain enemy types, because some enemy types are weak to thunder damage, or at least not resistant to it when they're resistant to everything else. It's good against constructs and objects. Or Tasha's Hideous Laughter to knock specific enemies prone. We're going to take Tasha's Hideous Laughter here. Thunderwave is one I don't mind having as an emergency backup option, but there are good options for items and stuff that do that. Tasha's is a little less replaceable, so we want this to lock down specific dangerous enemies. Knocking an enemy prone just prevents them from doing anything in Baldur's Gate 3, so they will just lose their turn completely, and it is a very dangerous spell to have cast on you, even if they get multiple saves against it. At character level 3, we get to pick our subclass. Now, it's probably not a surprise which subclass we're going with for this build, and that is going to be the College of Lore, though College of Swords is incredibly powerful for dealing damage, and the video that I mentioned called The Best Character in Baldur's Gate 3 uses that for dealing a bunch of damage. College of Lore lets you lean more into the things that Bard really wants to do. You are even better at skills, even better at spells, and even better at protecting your allies because of all of the extremely powerful subclass abilities that this gives you. Firstly, at this level, we get Cutting Words, which this tooltip is not helpful at describing at all, but what this lets you do is spend an inspiration die, remember we talked about those earlier, to against an incoming enemy attack or against a saving throw that an enemy is making to reduce it by the amount of your inspiration die. This can guarantee landing spells on enemies, forcing them to fail saving throws, or save an ally from a dangerous attack, and those are both incredibly powerful effects to have as a reaction, so that your character can just say no to whatever the enemy is doing. Every character in Dungeons & Dragons has 5 resources every turn of combat. Their action, their reaction, their bonus action, their concentration, and their movement, and Bard gets to use all of them incredibly well with Cutting Words, because you get a great reaction from Cutting Words. You have good actions, of course, because you're casting spells. You'll always be concentrating on something, so you will be concentrating on spells. You have a good bonus action with more inspirations or other bonus action spells like Healing Word, and of course, movement is very helpful for every character. So you're maximizing the resources of your character by taking College of Lore here. You also, at Bard level 3, get access to expertise in two of our skills, which doubles the bonus that we have in these skills. Doubles our proficiency bonus, making us basically incapable of failing these checks. The question here is basically, do you want to be on theme and have expertise in all 4 dialogue skills, or do you want to be even better at opening locks? From a mechanical standpoint, you're probably best off taking expertise in sleight of hand and then expertise in persuasion. We also get 3 more skills because we're a lore bard, so we just get to take 3 more skills. So let's pick up perception because every character should have that. And then we can take whichever of these we think are most on flavor. These are about equally useful, though religion comes up later on in the game, so you probably want to have that. And arcana is the most common of them, but honestly, between the 5 intelligence skills, which ones you select is a fairly marginal change, so it's something that you won't have to worry about too much. If you think one of these fits your character better, go ahead and take it. We also get access to level 2 spells, because we're a 3rd level spellcaster now, and Bard's level 2 spells include one of the most powerful combat spells in the game, and this will be our mainstay combat spell for quite a while, Cloud of Daggers. Cloud of Daggers is an AoE spell, concentration spell, that deals 4d4 slashing damage, and importantly, there is no saving throw or hit roll on this spell. It just always works, so enemies who are stuck in this are taking 4d4 of damage every turn, for an average of 10 damage. Now, this is a little deceptive, because they take the damage when you cast it and at the start of their turn, so they're always taking at least 2 hits before they get another action. This means this is not only the best AoE combat spell at this level, it's also the best single target damage spell at this level, and is just so powerful that it will win encounters all by itself. And of course you can use it to just end groups of enemies, or finish off low health enemies, because it never misses, so it always does at least 4 damage, or at least 8 damage before the enemy's next turn. If you happen to be incredibly unlucky and roll all 1s, you'll still do 8 damage with it, which is still pretty good. And finally, you can replace one of your level 1 spells with another level 2 spell if there's one you find you aren't using here. The most likely one of these to not be being used is Tasha's Hideous Laughter, probably. And if you are going to replace it, you can replace it with Heat Metal, which just wins some encounters, or with Enhance Ability, which is a useful thing to have in your back pocket. It does cost you a level 2 spell slot just to make you more likely to succeed on a skill check, so you need to make sure you use this only on important skill checks, but it is great utility to have. Invisibility, if you don't have it elsewhere in your party, is also very useful. So there's a lot of things you can choose here based on which utilities your party happens to need, but most likely the one that you're going to want is Heat Metal, which can just shut down enemies that rely on weapons in order to fight. So that's what we're going to pick up, and then we're going to move on to level 4. At character level 4, we get access to our very first feat, which, of course, we have sort of telegraphed this, is going to be the feat Actor. Actor gives us +1 charisma, so it makes us better at passing our dialogue checks and landing our skill checks, but it also gives us expertise in both deception and persuasion, or deception and performance, excuse me. And because you don't actually need proficiency in deception and performance to take Actor, this effectively gives us both proficiency and expertise in a single click. So we get to have extremely high bonuses in all of the dialogue skills just by taking this feat. Now, this isn't mandatory. You could start with 16 charisma, 12 wisdom, and take an ability improvement. You could also take an ability improvement if you're using Ethel's hair to go straight to 20 charisma. So if you're using Ethel's hair on this character, then I recommend the ability improvement over Actor. But this is just such a nice, clean way to get all of the dialogue skills and be so incredible at them on this character that I really appreciate taking the Actor feat. As always, also on Honor Mode, Alert is an excellent feat that is an alternative if you find that enemies are going first more than you'd like, but Dexterity, 16 Dexterity is... The reason we took 16 Dexterity is to prevent that and make sure that we're going before our enemies more often than not. For our cantrip selection at this level, now we're going to pick up Vicious Mockery, because at level 5, it becomes 2d4 psychic damage, and at level 10, it becomes 3d4 psychic damage. So we gain additional benefits from Vicious Mockery. It starts to become better than a bow shot, and also we're now better at landing it than we are landing bow shots. So as a default combat action, Vicious Mockery is a little better than just firing an arrow starting at this level. And then for our spell selection, we pick up another good utility, level 2 spell. I'm going to recommend between Enhanceability or Invisibility, depending on which of these your party doesn't have access to currently. Enhanceability can be used to make sure that you pass dialogue checks. We have friends for this, but enhanceability can be used for dialogue checks, for important lockpicking, and for important other skill checks that you might make throughout the game, so it's useful to have in your back pocket. Again, don't use this for every skill check, because it costs you a level 2 spell slot, which is a valuable resource, but it's still worth having. Another option to pick up is Hold Person, but between Heat Metal and Dissonant Whispers, we actually have great lockdown already that doesn't require enemies to make a saving throw every turn. So while Hold Person is a more powerful effect than that, we can shut down most enemies already without using it. This is an alternative to those spells, though, if you are not finding them particularly useful. Hold Person is even more devastating, or if you have like a paladin or a rogue that especially benefits from critical hits in your party, Hold Person can be very good. For default, though, we're going to pick up Enhanceability. We don't need to replace a spell because our spell selection is perfect, so let's move on to level 5. And at character level 5, we get Font of Inspiration, which gives us all of our inspiration dice back on a short rest. Remember, we get more short rests, so that's a lot of inspiration dice that we're going to be getting, which is amazing for a bard, because we can then defend our allies or cause our enemies to fail saving throws so much more reliably with Font of Inspiration. And our bardic inspiration gets even better at doing that, because the die that they are rolling for cutting words goes up to 1d8, an average of -4.5 on the die that the enemy is rolling, making them fail even more often. We also get level 3 spells, and this is where things get really exciting for this character, because Bard gets access to some of the best level 3 spells in the game already, and then it gets even better next level. 5th level is typically when your party will experience a huge power spike, because you get level 3 spells, which are where the best spells in the game live, and this is no exception. For our main combat spell now, this is going to be our best control spell basically throughout the game. We're going to take Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotic Pattern can lock down an entire group of enemies. It's a huge radius, and it just completely shuts them down. As long as you don't hit them, they can't do anything. So it just wins the encounter on its own, letting you kill the enemies one at a time. We're also going to replace one of our spells, most likely for another level 3 combat option. Here we can remove whichever one we are using least frequently, but most likely the one that we're going to remove is Heat Metal. We now have a better concentration spell than Heat Metal, because Hypnotic Pattern shuts down multiple enemies rather than just one, so we're more likely to use Hypnotic Pattern than Heat Metal, and we're going to replace that with Glyph of Warding. This is a great damage spell for AoE, and also has an AoE disable option, because you can put enemies to sleep with it, so it's a very powerful combat spell. It looks like it's supposed to be sort of a landmine and they have to step on it, but that's actually not how it works. You can cast it on an enemy and it goes off right away. So Glyph of Warding is basically a fireball, and you can use the ice version of Glyph of Warding to create an ice surface. Ice surfaces in Baldur's Gate 3 are extremely powerful, because enemies walking on them have a chance to fall over, and if they fall over while it's their turn, they just lose the rest of their turn. So it creates a huge stun and does great damage as well. This is going to be our mainstay for AoE damage going forward. Cloud of Daggers is still really useful to have because it's guaranteed damage and it's only a level 2 spell slot, but we now have some great options for combat and are way better at actually fighting ourselves rather than just supporting our allies because of our 5th level spells. That's it for level 5. Let's move on to level 6. And at character level 6, the hits don't stop coming. Bard basically gets amazing upgrades at every level, which is one of the things that's so cool about this class. There are almost no dead levels. You're always getting cool and powerful upgrades as you continue to level up. Firstly, you get Counter Charm, which is basically useless. You can cast this to give your allies advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened, and there are some encounters where this could come up, but honestly you can just forget you have this ability and it's fine. But most importantly, we get another level 3 spell, and we get Magical Secrets. Magical Secrets let us choose spells from any character class, across the entire class. There are some exceptions to what across the entire game. There are some exceptions to what we can pick up at this level, but for the most part we have access to all of the best spells in the game. All of the most powerful spells in the game are now at our disposal. There are so many amazing options for what we can pick for Magical Secrets. I think there's probably, 15 picks here, all of which are very good, and it will depend a little bit on what your party needs, which of them you're going to take. I'm going to mention about 5 of them to give you just some context for which are great picks, and I will mention which ones I recommend picking by default, but this is a choice that's going to depend a lot on what your party has access to. First, and most importantly, you're almost certainly going to take Counterspell. Counterspell is another reaction that shuts down enemy spellcasters, and you are great at counterspelling. You have high-level spell slots to use on it, and being able to trade your reaction for an entire enemy turn, and probably their most important resource, their highest level spell slot, is incredibly powerful. For your second choice, there's a lot of options here, all of which are quite viable and quite powerful, so I'm going to mention a few of them. First up, Haste. This is the best buff spell in the game. It's a great spell to be concentrating on if you have a powerful ally who does a lot of damage. There are characters that are better at using Haste, but Haste is still just a very good effect that you wouldn't hate having on your character. Next, Hunger of Hadar. This is a very dangerous concentration spell that completely shuts down enemies who are caught within it. They're in difficult terrain, and they are blinded without a saving throw, taking constant damage. If you can keep enemies locked in this spell, it will win encounters on its own. Mass Healing Word can be very powerful for this character, both to apply, just to heal your whole party, but also to apply buffs from items to your party. There are some items in the game that buff your characters when they receive healing, and Mass Healing Word is the best way to apply that. You can apply Bless and Blade Ward with a bonus action to your whole party with Mass Healing Word, which is great. Sleet Storm is one of the best control spells in the entire game because it creates a massive ice surface. I already talked about why those are so good. Spirit Guardians can let you do more damage up close and personal. I wouldn't recommend it for this pure lore bard build as much, but it's still very powerful as an option. Warden of Vitality is another way to bonus action apply buffs to your allies with Warden of Vitality. For the pure lore bard build, Mass Healing Word is better, but Warden does give you the option to heal as a bonus action every turn, so you can continue to pass out buffs. Misty Step is always good to have access to on every character, so it can give you a lot of mobility. And Command is one of the best crowd control spells in the entire game. It's a first level spell, but being able to take Command and just causing enemies to, without using your concentration, drop prone and lose their turn is super powerful. By default, the ones that I'm going to suggest taking are Counterspell and Hunger of Hadar. I think that these will win the most encounters on their own, but all of those are amazing options, and there's also many of these other spells are great too, so I just wanted to talk through some of the incredible options available to you with Magical Secrets. These are the two we're going to select for this build, but you can customize this significantly. Finally, for our second level 3 spell, I'm going to suggest taking Plant Growth. This quarters enemy movement speed and doesn't take your concentration. So if we're taking something like Hunger of Hadar or Sleet Storm, taking something like Hunger of Hadar, we can use Plant Growth to trap enemies inside the Hunger for even longer, which is very powerful to stop enemy movement. And just completely shut down encounters because they're blinded, they're trapped, they can't shoot out of the cloud because they're blinded, so they will just be stuck in there taking constant damage. All that together gives us very powerful concentration options. Between Hunger and Hypnotic Pattern, we can just absolutely shut down every encounter. We have great defensive options, we can shut down enemy movement, and we can do burst damage with Glyph of Warding, so we've got everything covered with our third level spells. At level 7, we get access to 4th level spells, and 4th level spells are a little less exciting than 3rd level spells for bards. We've already gotten our most powerful spell options, and our 4th level spells don't give us anything that's incredibly new and exciting for us. If we have an ally who's using stealth, if we have like a rogue or a Gloomstalker ranger in our party, greater invisibility can let them make a lot of free attacks before combat. But by default, the one I'm going to suggest you pick is Freedom of Movement. We don't need Confusion because we already have Hunger of Hadar and Hypnotic Pattern, which are, in my opinion, better AoE disable concentration spells. Freedom of Movement is just a powerful panic button. If an ally is stunned, then you can use it to break the stun, and one of the ways you lose honor mode is by having an ally stunned and then just completely wiped out because they don't get to do anything. So this just gives us a panic button to get out of danger, but your 4th level spell selection isn't as important. You can also go back for some of the utility spells that we missed earlier. At level 8, we get our second feat, and the feat that we're going to take is Alert. We want to guarantee that we go first in every combat, so gaining +5 to initiative to put us up to +8 means we will beat all but the very fastest enemies in initiative, and if we add any initiative gear, we'll win every initiative roll in the game. Going first means we can shut down every enemy before they start. If you're not playing on honor mode and are finding that you're losing concentration on spells a lot, you can also consider Warcaster, just make it a little easier for you to concentrate on spells, but Alert, just shutting down enemies before they get a chance to hit you, will probably help you maintain concentration more anyways, so we're going to pick that up. For our second level 4 spell, we're going to go back and grab another utility spell, something that we might need, or pick up greater invisibility. At this point, these are relatively low impact spells because 4th level spells are just less exciting for us than spells of earlier levels. At character level 9, we get 5th level spells, and this gives us access to Hold Monster, which we're definitely going to pick up because at this point we do want to be able to shut down the most dangerous enemies in the game and get guaranteed critical hits on them. Any martial character that is attacking will be very happy that we have Hold Monster. We could also pick up Hold Person. by replacing one of our earlier spells. If there's something here that you find you are no longer using, perhaps you are never concentrating on Cloud of Daggers anymore because you have other concentration spells, you can go grab Hold Person for single target disables. At this point, you should have a good idea of what spells your party is missing and what you think you might need, what effects you might need, and you can go grab utility spells based on that. Then, at Bard level 10, we get expertise in 2 more skills, so we get even better at passing our checks. We can grab expertise in our last conversation skill, just get expertise in intimidation as well. And if you haven't done the mirror yet, you should probably grab religion expertise just to make it easier to pass the religion checks for the mirror. That's a story event that shows up in Act 3, so you can make sure that you are better at passing that. For our cantrip selection, we're going to take True Strike to annoy people in the YouTube comment section. And for our spell selection, again, at this point you should have a good idea of what your party needs. There aren't any 5th level spells that are particularly strong for us, so we should go back and grab utility spells from earlier levels, stuff like invisibility or even something like Thunderwave. Tasha's also works against certain bosses that Hold Person and Hold Monster don't work against, so those can all be pretty reasonable options for you to take. But the real bonus here is that we get our magical secrets at level 10, so we get 2 more spells from any class in the game, and one of them is almost always going to be Conjure Elemental. Conjure Elemental is the best summon in the game and incredibly powerful. You can use it with a 5th level spell slot for an Elemental, or a 6th level spell slot for a Myrmidon, just to completely to add a hugely powerful day-long buff to your entire party. Conjure Elemental gives you a ton of additional power overall, makes your whole party so much more effective because you get to spend your spell slot on a day-long buff that lets you fight very well. Our second spell is a lot more open as to what we're going to take. Things like Wall of Fire can still be useful at this stage in the game. Guardian of Faith is an okay summon for this point, but probably Conjure Elemental is going to fill that role more often. You can even just go back for Misty Step as a panic button, and honestly, that's what I mostly suggest doing. While you should have things that give you Misty Step by this point in the game, or other sources of mobility, especially if you're going down the Illithid route. If you aren't doing that, Misty Step will just get you out of bad situations so reliably. But again, play around with this. This is kind of a more open selection, so find something that you think is fun and cool and pick that up. Then, at character level 11, we get 6th level spells, which of course are the most powerful spells in the game. Now, bards only have access to 2 6th level spells, Otto's Irresistible Dance and Eye Bite, though we have a 3rd 6th level spell because we have Conjure Elemental, so we are gaining the benefits of the upcasted Conjure Elemental as well. Otto's Irresistible Dance is irresistible. It guarantees stunning an enemy for a turn, and trading your 6th level spell slot for 1 turn off even the most powerful bosses in the game is very, very good, and this will just win encounters on its own, so it's what I recommend picking. Eye Bite is also actually a very good spell. If you have spare 6th level spell slots, this can be fun to use. Chances are, between autos and Conjure Elemental, your 6th level spell slots will be spoken for, but if you think you might cast Eye Bite or just want to have fun, because it's a very fun spell to use as well, you can replace one of your lower level spells for it. This is also our last chance to replace a spell. If there's one of these that you find you are not using at all at this point, then this is your last chance to get rid of it, but this is a very good spell selection that will give you a lot of optionality on into the end of the game. Or our second last chance to replace the spell, rather. For our last spell selection, we're just going to pick up our last 6th level spell, or again, go back for utility spells. And for our last feat, we're going to go ahead and take an ability improvement to max out our charisma, making sure that we land our spells most reliably. 12th level caps out the build, so again, you can replace any spell that you aren't using with a more powerful spell or one that you think you might have fun with. And because bards are so flexible, you have a lot of room here to play with fun spells from across the entire game and see if they're ones that you might use. Maybe for future playthroughs, a spell will inspire you to make a whole character based around it. All right, my friends, that is my pick for the best bard build in Baldur's Gate 3, but of course we can improve it even further with itemization and possible multiclassing, so let's talk about those. For our item selection for this character, bards are actually extremely item independent. There's actually very few items that we need in order to function. Some classes will have specific items that they really want in order to function, but bards don't particularly need any specific weapons or any specific armor or any specific gear in order to function. So they make your playthrough a little smoother because they can just use whatever's left over after your more demanding party members have picked out the perfect items for them. However, of course, there are still some things that really improve our character, and those basically come in two categories. Things that help us shut down enemies, and things that help keep us alive. For shutting down enemies, the things that you're looking for are just boosts to your spell save DC. Our combat power mostly comes from landing powerful control spells on enemies, so increasing our spell save DC means that things like Hypnotic Pattern and Hold Person and so on will land more often. And for keeping ourselves alive, we're just looking for decent defensive bonuses, increases to our armor class, and increases to our armor class and saving throws are very good. So those are sort of the two categories that we're looking for. In particular, also, while we have +8 initiative, if we get, I think you only need +11 initiative to guarantee going before every enemy in the game. So if we can get +3 to our initiative from random items, then that will guarantee we go first in every single combat. So armors that increase our initiative, like the Elven Chain, which we can wear even if we aren't proficient in medium armor, so even if you're a race that only gets light armor proficiency, and items like the Fistbreaker Helm that increase our spell save DC and give us initiative rolls can help us hit that threshold. Increases to our charisma, like from the Birthright Hat, are very good, and you can also benefit from the buff on heal item set, especially if you have a cleric in your party who was using them and then switched to a Radiant Orb item set once they got Spirit Guardians. The Bard can still carry these and make great use of them with the Hellrider's Pride and the Whispering Promise to bless and cast Blade Ward on allies that you heal. Like every spellcaster, the best weapon for you is Marka Heshkir, letting you refresh your 6th level spell slots and cast high level spells, including Chain Lightning, a 6th level spell, once per short rest. And if you are a race that gets access to shield proficiency, then either Ketheric's Shield or the Sentinel Shield for spell save DC or initiative are your best picks, like for most spellcasters. Special shout out also to the Wondrous Gloves, which give you an extra use of Bardic Inspiration, which is actually 4 extra uses of Bardic Inspiration, because those refresh on a short rest. So the Wondrous Gloves will not only increase your armor class, but make you even better at casting Cutting Words, and that can help shut down enemies significantly. This character is also very, very good at using scrolls and items that have spells associated with them, so carry a wide variety of scrolls, and that can help you win combats much more easily by having the appropriate spell available. Finally, you're likely to want to look for an item like the Amulet of Misty Step or the Disintegrating Nightwalkers that gives you access to Misty Step. Basically, every character should get this. Once you learn it as a magical secret, if you do, then you can equip this on a different party member or find a different pair of boots or different amulet. But those items will be invaluable for most of the early and mid game to let you reposition if you find yourself out of position. So any character that doesn't naturally get Misty Step should strive to grab it from an item if at all possible. Finally, one very important tip for Bard that you absolutely have to know in order to play a Lore Bard is that you need to, when you first play Lore Bard, open your character sheet, go to your spellbook, go to the Reactions tab of your spellbook and ensure that Cutting Words and Counterspell are both set to use and to ask you whether you should use them or not. By default, the game will just use these anytime it's available, so your counterspells will waste your spell slots against cantrips, and your Cutting Words will waste it against enemies attacking for like 2 damage. You want to be in control of when these are used, so make certain that you set these to ask whether or not to use them. And lastly, Bard is one of the character classes that multiclasses some of the best in the game. There are many, many different combinations you can use with Bard in order to gain powerful multiclassing benefits, but I'm going to highlight 3 of them, and of course you can find my build guides to many of these multiclasses complete on my channel, but I'm going to highlight 3 of them as being especially powerful here. 1 level of Sorcerer taken as your first level gives you Constitution save proficiency, which makes you much better at passing concentration checks. So if you're finding you're failing concentration checks, taking a level of Sorcerer can make that much easier. You also get access to the Shield spell as a Sorcerer, which is a very powerful defensive tool that can help keep your character alive much more easily. 1 level of Warlock for Fiend Warlock can give you Eldritch Blast, which is very powerful. It's the best combat cantrip in the game. Sorcerer also gives you Ray of Frost, too, which is another good reason to take it, because it gives you a powerful combat cantrip. So either of these can give you great options for default combat actions. But 1 level of Fiend Warlock also gets you access to command without having to spend a magical secret on it, and so you can have this right from the start of the game. You can get Hex to do a little more damage, or Armor of Agathis to have great defensive options as well. So 1 level of Warlock taken basically any time in your build can power up your build significantly with one of the best spells in the game and a solid combat option. Finally, a single level of Cleric, usually Life Domain Cleric, and you want to take this as your 2nd level, gets you several things that are amazing for bards. It gets you heavy armor and shield proficiency, so right away it solves a lot of the challenges that bards have by giving you proficiency and in 2 of the better defensive options and keeping your character alive more easily. It gets you access to Life Domain, increasing your healing significantly, and it gets you access to the Thaumaturgy cantrip, giving you advantage on intimidation and performance checks without any of the downsides of friends, so it makes you much better at talking, while also giving you better support options because you can cast Bless, and you can learn as a spell a number of other powerful cleric spells, including Sanctuary, which is one of the best defensive options in the game. So those are some great options for multiclassing, and again, you can refer to my build guides for those multiclasses for more detailed discussions of those characters. Alright, my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at the best Bard build in Baldur's Gate 3. And, of course, as always, if you have, feel free to leave a comment and like the video. That helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And you can subscribe to my channel for more daily strategy videos on Baldur's Gate 3 and other strategy games. Cheers, my friends, and I will catch you next time.